Cinemania Field Report, Pseudorealities, From Atomic Angst to Digital Dread. As the 1980s drew to a close, two things happened more or less simultaneously. The Soviet Union fell, taking atomic anxieties with it, and computer technology rose, bringing with it fears over solipsistic artificial realities, as well as the forces manipulating them behind the scenes. Other fears over damage to the ecosphere began to arise as well, and anxiety tied to the abandonment of the natural world in favor of industry. While these new fears paled in comparison to the monolithic specter of the mushroom cloud, in aggregate they were almost as intense, all the more so for being nebulous and poorly understood. Then in 1989 came Tetsuo the Iron Man. Just as the Japanese were the first to experience the horrors of nuclear fire, they were also among the first to make the transition to new fears over technology subsuming humanity. Tetsuo the Iron Man was a gut-wrenching cyberpunk exploration of the fusion of man and machine, and remarkably, it explored these fears completely outside the framework of a post-nuclear apocalypse. Hollywood, ever attuned to shifts in the pop culture wind and always seeking new anxieties to explore and exploit, began to make the shift heralded by Tetsuo the Iron Man. This began in 1990 with Total Recall, literally 1 year after the Berlin Wall fell. In 1992, the year after the USSR dissolved, the pseudo-reality genre picked up steam with movies like the worst Stephen King adaptation ever, The Lawnmower Man, as well as the Fangoria-financed Bruce Campbell vehicle Mindwarp, aka Brain Slasher. In 93 and 94, we got movies like Ghost in the Machine, Arcade, and Brain Scan, all of which were, in one way or another, using the lens of the satanic panic to grapple with and cash in on fears of a digital future. The iconic failure of 1995's Waterworld was a test case, proving that nuke fears were out. Waterworld tried to do what The Road Warrior did, only wetter, and with what was then the biggest budget in cinema history, but it drowned at the box office. Francis Fukuyama had been trumpeting we were at the end of history. The communist bloc was dismantling its ICBMs, and the West was just sort of generally teabagging the corpse of the USSR while forgetting that doing that shit would mean the opposing player was going to respond with one hell of a grudge. If 1995 was the year when nuke fear films fizzled, it was a masked year for cyber angst cinema. Mamoru Oshii's iconic Ghost in the Shell landed that year, as did The Net, Hackers, Virtuosity, Strange Days, Johnny Mnemonic, notably Keanu Reeves' first foray into that genre, and The City of Lost Children, a French film fusing cyberpunk and steampunk. In 1996 came the sequel to The Lawnmower Man. Then Dark City followed in 98, along with Peter Weir's truly prescient film The Truman Show, which starred Jim Carrey as a man unwittingly inhabiting a reality TV show. Finally, the genre peaked in 1999 with a trio of films that were virtually the same exact story: The 13th Floor, David Cronenberg's Existence, and, of course, The Matrix, which did cyber-angst pseudo-reality so well it effectively caused the genre to throw a blue screen of death and shut down for a while. As a side note, I want to point out that all these films I just listed are descendants, in one way or another, of 1982's Tron. There was a film well before its time, both in terms of its content and the fears that exploit it. It also explored techno fears completely without atomic angst. Had it landed in 1992 instead of 1982, it would have been a mega hit. But unfortunately, culture just wasn't ready. Well, The Matrix did spawn some unfortunate sequels in the early aughts, and other excellent films have popped up periodically over the past quarter century. For example, 2000's The Cell, 2009's Surrogates, 2021's Free Guy, and 2026's absolutely excellent Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die. Ultimately, the pseudo-reality genre faded for several key reasons. First, we got more familiar with technology, and after certain panics failed to materialize, Y2K bug, I'm looking at you, the public began to relax and assume that anxieties over digital technology were unfounded. Second, 9/11 happened, and when the towers came down, the angst of the collective unconscious was sent spinning off in completely different directions. Atomic anxieties reemerged, but this time slickly repackaged into fears over terrorists wielding loose nukes to manufacture consent for new forever wars, torture, indefinite detention, and mass surveillance. Third, cinema pivoted to zombie apocalypse movies, a genre which was exhumed for its use in promoting a siege mentality and ginning up fears over immigrants and the unhoused. But most importantly, the pseudo-reality genre faded because movies about pseudo-realities get people thinking in ways that today's techno-fascists don't want. If people were thinking about pseudo-realities, they might start thinking about the men behind the curtain. And if they did that, they might come to the conclusion that many of our worst fears in this regard have already been realized. The pseudo-reality genre peaked just as we were being promised wonderful new digital communications technologies that were right around the corner, and then fell off as soon as we actually got to play with all those shiny new toys. Now, we actually know what it's like to wander through endless virtual worlds and to experience simulations that come close to reality. We know what it means to wear a computer on your face and to weave the net into your daily life, and pseudo-reality cinema couldn't handle the fact that the future is just a bit shitty and disappointing. We were promised megacorporations that would invade our souls and create synthetic life, and we've actually got megacorporations that invade our Twitter feed and create racist chatbots. Tyrell Corporation isn't going to sell you a sexy Reploid who can crush walnuts with her thighs, but Elon Musk is a great deal on a Cybertruck for you. The promise of global communication represented by the internet turned out to be a net negative for humanity. Brain rot, the attention economy, mass shootings caused when the attention economy fused with meme-driven online radicalization, the flattening of culture, the cynical use of syncretic conspiracism as a fascist tool of power. And as usual, some of our best and craziest sci-fi authors saw it coming from a long way away. We already know Philip K. Dick was one. We've covered his quote about spurious realities a few times now. But another was humorist, author, futurist, and technologist Douglas Adams. A line from his 1978 work, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, ended up being startlingly predictive of how the internet would shape up to be.
Meanwhile, the poor babelfish, by effectively removing all barriers to communication between different races and cultures, has caused more and bloodier wars than anything else in the history of creation.
Frank Herbert, another iconic sci-fi author, also saw the abuse of information technology coming all the way back in 1965. His novel Dune had a line with particular significance for artificial intelligence.
Once men turned their thinking over to machines in the hope that this would set them free, but that only permitted other men with machines to enslave them.
But it was Robert Anton Wilson who encapsulated the problem perfectly when he expanded upon Timothy Leary's term reality tunnel in his 1983 book Prometheus Rising. In it, Wilson provides insight on how people can be trained to filter reality for themselves.
Intelligence is the capacity to receive, decode, and transmit information efficiently. Stupidity is the blockage of this process at any point. Bigotry, ideologies, etc. block the ability to receive. Robotic reality tunnels block the ability to decode or integrate new signals. Censorship blocks transmission.
Reality tunnels, the original flavor of pseudo-reality. All the movies we've talked about were grasping toward the idea that technology was a threat, but ultimately they all got it wrong. The cyberpunk future of now is both more horrifying and yet somehow more banal than anything futurists could have ever committed to screen. Nobody's slapping electrodes to their temples. Nobody's jacking into the matrix. Nobody's being digitized to the grid. In the hands of absolute control, virtual reality was supposed to be dystopian, inescapable, and fascinating. Well, 2 out of 3 will have to do, because the techno-fascists are going for the cheaper option, training us to curate fact and fiction for ourselves. They get us to create reality tunnels that benefit their interests. They get us to layer pseudo-reality on top of real reality. As such, what we're experiencing is more grim than any of the dystopian futures envisioned by the movies. And not just because we're also having a reboot of the Cold War. The fantasy was that a cyber dreamer could return to the real world at some point. The reality is, we can't turn the fucking thing off. But don't be scared. Simply keep another Robert Anton Wilson quote at top of mind.
If you think you know what the hell is going on, you're probably full of shit.
This has been another Cinemania Field Report. This episode is written by Ethan Ireland and Andy Slack, and was performed by Ethan Ireland. Additional voices provided by Mark Hennessy-Barrett and Andy Slack. Music by Carl Casey of White Bat Audio. This is a work of parody and/or satire, and should not be construed as making statements or allegations of actual fact. All celebrity voices are impersonated, unless otherwise stated. Extract from the BBC Radio 4 program, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, appears here pursuant to UK fair dealing doctrine, for the purposes of non-commercial research, study, criticism, or review.